Twisted Tales.
How Little Red Riding Hood, that is Bianca, survived the wolf for the second time. By Marko Pejovic, narrated by Zara. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Bianca. Previously, when she was younger, she wore a red cap, which is why many called her Little Red Riding Hood. Now, after she's grown a little bit, it appears that she forgot about it, and she seldom visits her granny as well, who knitted that Red Riding Hood for her. I love my granny, but the only road to her leads through the dense and dark forest, Bianca used to say, and I have to change bus twice. But on that day, she had to bring supplies and food to her granny because she's too old and couldn't do the shopping on her own, and Daddy and Mommy were very busy as usual. "Come on, Bianca, time to get up," shouted Mommy from the kitchen. Bianca muttered a few words in protest, although she knew in advance that it was futile. "If you want to get back before dark, you should leave as soon as possible," said Mommy. Bianca sat on her bed and looked around her room. 2 shelves overflowing with books that'll start to fall down at any moment. Board games scattered near the box in the corner, her trousers, shirt, jacket, and socks dumped on the chair. She thought that maybe it's time to clean up this mess, as Mommy was telling her all the time. But now she simply has no time. Her habitual response to Mommy. She washed her face and dressed in a hurry, and Mommy already prepared breakfast for her. "Last time you went to visit your granny alone," Mommy tried to recall. "It was some 3 years ago? And Granny's hardly waiting to see you. She would love to see you wearing the Red Riding Hood she knitted for you." "Mummy, I'm not a kid anymore," frowned Bianca, although she knew she would wear that stupid knitted Red Riding Hood to please her granny. "But then I'll put my new shoes on." "How are you going to walk in those shoes with elevated heels in the woods? You'll get blisters," said Mummy, but Bianca wouldn't listen to her. She put on the Red Riding Hood, which she had barely dug out of the closet, her autumn coat, and also the shoes she adored, although she was aware they are more suitable for a bit older girl. She checked herself in the mirror and saw a person who didn't look like younger woman or little girl. Some items of clothes hung loosely on her, and others were too tight. On the whole, she wasn't satisfied. Mummy gave her a bag with groceries, and so Bianca went on her journey. She changed buses twice and didn't talk with strangers, as her parents always advised her. When she got off the bus, she was standing for a while in front of the woods, and already after a few steps, she had a feeling that someone was walking towards her. Immediately she wished to go back, but then she recognized Tibor, the game warden. "Here's Little Red Riding Hood again," he said. "You haven't been with us for a long time." "I couldn't make it, due to school and other obligations," said Bianca, but she was afraid, because she was looking towards the woods. "Here is a bit darker than usual, or maybe it's just me. Everything is like it was. A wolf is still hanging around here, but don't worry. You can count on someone to guard our woods," he said proudly. Bianca said goodbye to Tibor, the game warden, and moved on. It was early autumn. Sharp smell of pines was in the air, and tall and mighty trees aroused in Bianca the old feeling that she is small and feeble. Leaves were falling and rustling under her feet. She didn't come far when she felt pain in her left pinky toe and right heel. She'll get blisters from those shoes after all. She arrived at a small fork in the road by the brook, just in time to rest, and she sat on the bench to take off her shoes. Left path will take her to her granny, but the right path was overgrown with bushes, and it was hard to tell where it leads. She was sitting there, and after a while she felt that her mouth was dry. Her body was trembling, and drops of sweat slowly broke on her forehead. She stood up and went to wash her face in the brook, but reflection in the water surprised her. She was a few years younger, wearing a yellow-striped dress she outgrew a long time ago, and she carried the red backpack with shoulder straps that unstitched years ago. As if by magic, she went back to the past for 3 years. "Ouch! This is impossible," screamed Bianca in fear. "What's happening to me?" Slowly she stood up and took several deep breaths, hoping it's only her, but to no avail. She had a feeling that she lost control over her body and was forced to take an overgrown path. Bushes slowly let her through, roots retreated, branches lifted up, and she saw a white pebble path in front of her. She was walking for a little while as if some strange forces were dragging her along, and when she finally pulled herself together, she noticed that she is sitting on a plateau. On the stone across her, some creature was sitting. She strained to see and was relieved when she recognized the game warden. But she instantly realized it was actually the wolf, dressed up like a guardian of the forest. "Where are you going, girl?" asked the wolf. "I'm going to my granny," said Bianca. "And where does your granny live, girl?" "You go from the fork to the old oak, and thereby the doomed cave you'll find my granny's cabin. By the way, I always wondered why they call the cave doomed. Because once you enter it, you'll never come out," said the wolf. He wanted to change the subject and said, "I noticed that those little shoes are hurting you. I shouldn't wear them today. They are not broken in yet." "Oh, you don't need to torment those pretty little feet. I'll make the road ahead easier for you." He pulled open a bush and unveiled a shiny black machine. "Come on, get on my bike, and soon we'll come to your granny together." Bianca was perplexed. "It's strange that you, the game warden, are driving the bike through the woods, and you know it's forbidden." "Look, girl, nothing is better than doing what is not permitted," smiled the wolf. He leaned closer to her, which was apparently enough for her to smell the heavy scent of his fur. And then she remembered that once a wolf disguised in her granny's clothes also came this close to her. She had practically felt his breath on her face, his muzzle by her nose, and his pawns around her waist. Before she managed to dispel that image in front of her eyes, she became aware that this fake game warden is standing closer to her. He is pulling her against his furry body, hugging and holding her fast, so that she feels even more nauseous and frightened. "I'll die," she thought, and at the same time she knew that she wants to live. She started to fight back, pummeling his chest, pushing him away and beating him. She struggled like a lioness, but at the same time, Wolf was trying to silence her, closing her mouth with his pawn. And when she thought she was defeated, she heard Tibor, the game warden, singing nearby. Tibor's voice was solid and deep, and the wolf recoiled when he heard it. He was afraid he'd be caught, so he loosened his grip. Bianca broke free from him and ran away like the wind. She was running breathlessly, terrified that the wolf is behind her, chasing her and staring with those big bloodshot eyes, hoping that she will stumble and fall so he could instantly grab and devour her. Her Red Riding Hood was pulled back, and she thought that the wolf had caught her up, but the riding hood just snagged into a tree branch. Bianca pulled it hard without slowing down, but while she struggled, the riding hood unknitted into a ball of red wool, which Bianca quickly put in her pocket and hurried away. And so, in her frenzied flight, she finally rushed inside the granny's cabin. "What happened, my child?" asked Granny when she saw breathless Bianca, who ran into her arms weeping bitterly. At last she gave vent to her frightened heart. "It was horrible, Granny. That horrible man, that wolf, that beast pulled me, and he squeezed me and choked me," sobbed Bianca, and something stirred in her pocket. "Look, Granny, this wool. I don't know what's with it and how to calm it down," said Bianca through her tears. She put the wool on the table, and it started to crawl like a twisted snake, oddly slim but restless and fast. Granny caressed the wool and told it soothingly, "Little wool, please try your best. Go and put your soul to rest." And the wool slowly retreated into the small box on the shelf by the fireplace and closed a lid. "It will stay still in there for a while, don't you worry," said Granny, and set the table for Bianca to eat her supper. Only at that moment Bianca realized it was late, that she lingered for too long in the woods. She decided to stay and spend the night with Granny. She'll go back home tomorrow. "Granny, please could you tell Mom that I will stay with you tonight so she won't worry," said Bianca. Granny nodded and kissed her granddaughter on the forehead, and Bianca fell into sound but still restless sleep. When she woke up in the morning, she sighed with relief. "It's okay. I'm in my Granny's cabin, and here nothing horrible would happen to me," she said to herself, and the next moment she heard knocking on the door. Granny was sitting by the fireplace facing away from the door, but she didn't answer because she was already hard on hearing. Bianca dressed up in a hurry and went to open the door, and then she saw another Granny. Bianca gazed in wonder first at the old woman by the fireplace, and then at the one standing at the door. That's when the one at the door addressed her. "Bianca, I'm your real Granny. I went out to pick wild berries for the jam, and the wolf took the opportunity to sneak into the house. He dressed up to look like me to trick you, and now he's waiting by the fireplace to gobble up both of us." Bianca was feverishly thinking about what was she supposed to do, and she recalled the box with the wool in it. She opened the box, threw the wool on the floor, and the wool crawled to the old woman by the fireplace. At that moment, Bianca realized that the old woman at the door was actually the wolf in disguise. He jumped to catch her, and Bianca started to run away. And in the chase, jars with jam, cheese canisters, pots and pans, test tubes, and vials were falling on the floor. Wolf was a couple of times so close to catching her that he managed to reach her dress with his claws and ripped it apart in a few places. Granny, the real one, by the fireplace, whispered something to the wool, and it instantly went after the wolf. He was surprised the wool was approaching him so rapidly that he stopped and looked at it in amazement. and in short order, wool wrapped itself around his body, first around his legs, then up his chest and over his arms. It all happened almost in a second, and before he managed to move, he realized he was already completely wrapped up and unable to walk, and he just thudded against the floor. Tibor, the game warden, was passing by, and when he heard the noise, he rushed into the cabin. "What do we have here?" he asked. "Somebody got the better even of the wolf." And then Bianca told him what had happened. She wanted to skip over the part when the wolf grabbed her and held her tight, how she defended herself, but at that moment, wool was coming loose, and it was possible that the wolf would break free. So she decided to tell everything and conceal nothing. "Well, we have no choice now but to throw him in the doomed cave," said Tibor, the game warden. "Down there the wolf will be with similar wolves, condemned to spend his life in the cave's darkness and never get out of it. He would probably die there, unless in the meantime he's devoured by other wolves in the cave," added the game warden. He heaved the wolf off his shoulders, and when he threw him into the deep black hole, the wool untangled around the wolf by itself and crawled back into the cabin. Inside, it knitted, tailored, and created a beautiful red dress by itself, and Bianca put it on. She also put on her shoes with raised heels, and for the first time, she felt they fit properly. "Come here to get a better look," said Granny and waved to Bianca, inviting her to come and stand in front of the mirror. Bianca looked at her reflection. She didn't see a frightened little girl in a yellow striped dress with red backpack on her back. She saw a girl, and she knew this girl would be brave and live for many years to come, to a life she'd be proud of.